a United States Army field hospital somewhere near the front lines.
Check this place out. See what the nurses are like.
That one, the sultry bitch with the fire in her eyes.
Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war.
Who are those men? Friends of yours, Murray?
I think you will find these accommodating. They're quite dry.
Don't you use olives?
We do have to make certain concessions to the war. We're 3 miles from the front line.
This is the story of two indispensable military surgeons. They had the Army over a barrel. But did they take advantage of it? Yes. MASH, a motion picture that raises some important moral questions. And then it drops them.
What are you two hoodlums doing in this hospital?
Well, what's the matter with her today?
Look, Mother, I want to go to work in 1 hour. We are the pros from Dover.
Somebody get that dirty old man out of this operating theater.
And then give me at least one nurse who knows how to work in close without getting her tits in my way.
I wonder how a degenerated person like that could have reached a position of responsibility in the Army Medical Corps.
He was drafted.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.
His will be done. Oh, Frank, my lips are hot. Oh, kiss my hot lips.
We have got to share this with the rest of us.
Frank. Oh.
What the hell is that?
Oh, Frank. Wait a second.
What is it?
Turn the light off. No, turn the light off.
I should check with the military vicar's office. You see, I cannot give absolution to a man who is about to commit suicide.
You have any particular method that you'd recommend?
Black capsule.
Black capsule.
Suicide is painless. It brings on many changes.
This isn't a hospital. It's an insane asylum.
You incredible nincompoop. It's the end of the quarter.
Hello, welcome to Movie Uppers. My name is Bob Sham.
I am Angela.
The sounds you hear may be dogs, and we're trucking along. We're in our last 3 for our official theme of glory and propaganda, war movies, movies adjacent to war, a lot of anti-war movies, some more jingoistic selections, and of the like, I guess.
Okay.
But today, we're talking about a pretty prolific and beloved director. I like a lot of this guy's work, quite a bit. And this movie helped to put him and his overall style on the map. And this is one of our more pure comedies, one of 2 pure comedies. We will have one more comedy after this. This came out in 1970. MASH, directed by Robert Altman, written by Ring Lardner Jr. and Richard Hooker, based upon a novel by Richard Hooker, and starring Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, Tom Skerritt, Sally Kellerman, and Robert Duvall, among others. Donald Sutherland passed away about a month ago now. Another Robert Altman muse, Shelley Duvall, passed away maybe about 4 days ago as of this recording. And I consider her one of my personal favorite actors. And I think if you're a fan of Robert Altman, it's hard not to have a strong appreciation for Shelley Duvall. It just feels like there will never be anyone specifically like Shelley Duvall and how she was presented, her style, her overall look. Much like Sutherland, some great films in the prime of their lives.
Absolutely. And she was such a unique person.
Yeah.
This is my Donald Sutherland.
You like the 70s Donald Sutherland.
I love 70s Donald Sutherland.
So MASH is, what does MASH stand for, do you know?
Medical and surgery hospital.
They usually don't put the "and" in with the. It's Mobile Army Surgical Hospital.
That makes more sense. They don't really move.
I'm surprised you didn't say Army, but it's okay. I didn't think you'd get it anyway. This movie is coming from 1970. We're not even a decade removed from crawling out of the Hays Code. It was pretty softened well before this point. But this movie seems like it was a big hit for Altman, maybe a surprising hit, and one that established his ensemble style, his layered conversation style that feels more natural. With a lot of the best Altman movies, it seems like there's just so much there that you could catch on rewatch. And I think a movie like Nashville is a more perfected version of the comedic style we see here. I think MASH does have a much more obvious comedic sensibility for the average viewer. So we got 3 surgeons here, right? We got Donald Sutherland as Captain Benjamin Franklin Pierce Jr. They call him Hawkeye. Tom Skerritt as Captain Augustus Forrest. His name is Duke. And then a little bit later, we get Elliot Gould as Captain John Francis McIntyre. Trapper John, named that way because in college he trapped girls in the dorm to imply, or it was a story about how someone walked in on him and the woman was like, "Help, I'm trapped," or something like that.
Right. The way that they interact with each other is so crude, and it would be. And we've talked about this before. The gayness that is there.
Yeah.
The absurdity. They walk in immediately and are just hitting on people.
Yeah.
Every girl they see, they want to fuck. They're touching boobs and butts, but they're even doing it to each other. These guys are very comfortable with each other in that way. I love how Hawkeye calls everyone babe. It's so endearing. The thing that Altman is really super good at is, yes, we do come in with these 2 surgeons on their first day. He doesn't take time to establish characters. You get to know them. But that's what I love.
There's not even like a true overarching plot.
No. You're just there with them until they go away.
It's just an ensemble character piece until the very end. Also, some other players, Sally Kellerman, who's Hot Lips Houlihan, she will come along a little later. But she's very kind of stiff about her position. These guys they're rebels, right? And then you have Robert Duvall as Major Frank Burns, who is also very a by-the-book kind of guy. But also, they imply in the movie that he's very shitty at being a surgeon as well.
He's shitty at being a surgeon. He's religious, but he's a hypocrite. And he blames everyone else. There's a very young Bud Cort in this movie. And at one point, someone dies under his hand.
He blames
him.
He
blames Bud Cort for not getting a needle fast enough from a different room. Bud Cort actually tries to say to him, "Shouldn't I get a nurse for you?" I don't think he knows what he's doing. And that's why he was trying to get someone else. But this guy blamed it on him, and he starts crying, the poor kid.
Finished work for the day?
Yes, why?
Good. I just wanted to make sure you had time to sleep this off.
Trapper! Captain McIntyre, what the hell?
Captain?
What's going on? Who started this?
I hit him. He's an ignoramus, that knucklehead.
He wouldn't have touched me if I had my guard up. Let us settle this, Colonel, between ourselves. Alone. What do you think I'm running, an English boarding school?
And then there's their commanding officer, Colonel Henry Braymore Blake, played by Roger Bowen.
He's a bumbling idiot. He's so fun.
Controls them by not controlling them, really.
And he's just shacked up with that girl with the bangs.
Yeah, and he's no better than they are. Their official cover most of the time.
There are the most women in this movie of any movie we've watched this month because we have nurses. Because of that, there's the most actual sex in this movie that we've seen all month. And there is a constant conversation about how everyone's cheating on their people at home. Yeah. The nurses and the doctors.
This movie, it's pretty been well stated over and over that though this takes place during the Korean War, based upon the novel that took place in the Korean War, that this is truly a Vietnam era movie. It's crude as this movie is, it is balanced in these scenes of in the surgery rooms, operating rooms. They get incredibly bloody. We see men hemorrhaging. We see the trauma of war, but it's all in these surgical rooms. We see the aftermath of what's happening to these men. It really helps to make it very stark. We saw a little supplementary mini doc about this. Apparently the studios, that they thought the scenes were too bloody and they wanted to take them out. Talk about missing the overall point to think that you'd have to take that out. The grotesque nature, the visceral nature of those scenes, it has to be there to balance out the entire crude comedic tone of the movie. And it gives more weight to the comedy aspects of the movie.
You understand at some point that this is their way of coping with the terrible, awful things that they're seeing. They're away from their home. They're away from the comforts. They're living in tents with each other.
I wonder how a degenerated person like that could have reached a position of responsibility in the Army Medical Corps.
He was drafted.
Most of them were drafted.
Yeah.
These are not guys who chose to be there.
Yeah.
They are waiting until it's time to go home. At one point later, when they find out they get to go home, fucking Duke just walks out of surgery, basically. He says, hey, can you finish sewing this up for me? And the other guy says, you should finish this.
Yeah.
And so Hawkeye's like, well, okay, I'll see ya.
And this movie also seems like not only the turning point of Robert Altman's career and what we would see him do going forward. Also, it seems like, is this the ground floor for crude comedies from this point forward? That we would see more in like teen adolescent formats, like your Porky's, tons of 80s stuff, American Pie, shit like that. I'm trying to recall any crude comedies before this time. I haven't seen this is from 1970. I haven't seen every, crude comedy. It seemed like they peaked in the 80s and early 90s,
You
right?
don't think of the 60s as being that kind of time. I was reading about, yes, this is super crude. It is super bloody. It is very sexual.
And
There's a lot of language.
But it's the pure comedy, the crudeness of it that pulled in and made this a hit.
Exactly.
More than these subtle, subversive anti-war tones.
And I do think what you just said is true, that it paved the ground. It also, when it was taken to television, the television show could not be as bloody and as crude as this movie is.
Right.
But at the time, it was the most that had been on television. It was the first primetime show to have any sort of nudity.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's what I read. I don't know if it was a boob or a butt.
Maybe a half an ass?
Maybe half an ass, but it was the first television show, and they came on after All in the Family.
The MASH show was syndicated throughout our entire childhood.
It was.
A very popular show. Its finale was a big deal when it finally went off the air. But yeah, I have triggering thoughts. I wouldn't say triggering like it hurts me or something, but where, you're watching, I don't know, some late night show, and then what's going to be syndicated after 11 p.m., it's often some shit like MASH. And then you'd hear that song signified like the end of the day or something like that, right?
There's a comfort to it. And I had never heard the song with words because this was my first viewing of this film. And that song is so beautiful and sad.
Suicide is painless. It brings on many changes, and I can take or leave it if I please.
It's like the Cheers song is like this too.
Yes.
Right? When you hear the whole expanded version of the song, it's like, what the fuck? Right?
Yeah.
And the MASH theme is like that too.
I love that it really is a theme in this movie. You hear the whole song at the beginning. A guy sings the entire song in the middle, and then you hear it again at the end.
Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, is the only person who was in the original movie and the TV show.
And the character in the television show does the cross-dressing to try to get sent home, he was the first main character to be created fresh for the television show. Because I kept watching for who that was going to be in this, because I didn't watch it consistently. I thought it was going to be Duke.
I have like an emotional connection to the theme, but I didn't really watch MASH too much when I was a little kid.
Randomly.
I think too much of that's going to go over my head at that age, but I might appreciate it more now. This dentist character, and this leads into the theme song in particular that is known for having a big dick. And he reveals that because, and this is such a goofy dude thing, because he couldn't get it up for a certain lady, that he must be gay. And he's not gay. He just had, that's not what makes you gay.
No.
But, so it's this silly bit where he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to kill myself. And they, instead of talking him out of it, they do this fake pill where they make him think they're going to poison him, but they don't really. So they have this service for this guy where he lays down and they sing that song. He actually lays
in a freaking coffin.
And they hand him a pill, which they think is going to be like a cyanide pill or something, but it's just nothing. So he lays down just there was something weirdly serene about this scene.
Through early morning fog I see visions of the things to be, the pains that are withheld for me. I realize and I can see.
Funny and calming in an odd way.
It was very sweet because each man came up and gave him something. One guy gave him a nudie mag. One guy gave him some whiskey. You've got this man singing in this song so beautifully. In the middle of this song, it gets like happy sounding. It's still not Happy Topic. This weird celebration in the fact that you have a choice, I guess.
Suicide is painless. It brings on many changes, and I can take or leave it if I please.
Throwing your whole education away.
He's laid out and they send one of the nurses in to jack him off or maybe some other things, and she's resistant.
I think they fucked because she couldn't even talk the next day.
Well, she's resistant at first, and then she sees his giant penis, and so, yeah, she gives in.
She wanted to fuck Hawkeye the whole time, and she was going to leave the next day, and he said to her, not me, but can you do this for your country? Basically. And she does.
Yeah, this movie is...
Save a man's life
tonight. This movie
tonight.
walked so movies like Meatballs could run, right? Porky's, Meatballs, all that shit. Maybe through a more modern viewing of it, I find it hard not to have some sympathy for Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan, who, as the point at any comedy in any movie from like 1990 and before, there's got to be, check out this fun romp sexual harassment we're doing. And we'll do like an impersonation of Asian people as well. That's a crowd pleaser for the comedies of, decades back.
And she is the classic tight-assed, thinks she's better than everyone woman who the joke would be just needs a good fucking. Well, but in this one, she gets it.
The equally uptight Frank Burns tries to give it to her, but they manage to mic their lovemaking session.
Radar sneaks a microphone.
Radar can get things done.
Oh, kiss my hot lips.
Lips. Hot lips?
We have got to share this with the rest of the camp. Switch it over.
Okay. Frank. Frank, yes.
Darling.
Oh, Frank. Oh, Frank, strangle me. Hard. Frank. Oh.
What the hell is that?
Oh.
One cool detail that we saw in that short doc was that when the movie's all put together, because Altman's completely ignoring the writing, the scripts, and we're seeing 90s era Robert Altman try to be very nice to the writers in hindsight, like, oh, we really we couldn't have done it without the tone he set. Just being so polite, because writers hated this guy. But Altman's trying to give him a little something, right? In the interview, yeah, if it wasn't for, Ring Lardner Jr.'s writing, we couldn't have gotten it done, even though he threw absolutely everything out the window. When you're going to the editing room of this thing, you're not getting a movie with a plot. It is just a lot of goofy character moments and scenes. It must have looked like chaos when you're plopping that thing down in front of you to edit. But the scenes of the intercoms and stuff, those were added in post-production.
Captain Bandini is now performing a femoral femoral POPLITERAL artery exploration.
But it really helped to split up the movie and make it feel like it was at least being chapterized in some way.
It was so smart. They said language was taken directly from actual announcements.
And they're listening to like the Japanese Armed Forces radio. The movie's got a great sense of humor, even if some things might feel a little dated. Poor Hot Lips. Justice for Hot Lips Houlihan.
They have a bet of whether she's a real blonde or not. Yeah. In order to find out, they staged this whole situation where as the nurses come to take their shower and they change the sign from men to ladies so that no men's go in while they're naked, they each call over a nurse for a different reason. Hey, come look at my corns. Hey, come over here and do this. Look at these pictures of my kids. And she's the only one that goes in. And they all move their chairs and sit as an audience. And someone pulls a string and the whole side of the tent comes up and she's just naked. And she immediately just falls flat on the ground, which I guess is what you would do. I would think you would run maybe, but it's even more humiliating because she doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because she's so in control all of the time.
Yeah. This isn't a hospital! It's an insane asylum! And it's your fault! Because you don't do anything to discourage them!
What do you want me to do?
Put them under arrest! See what a court-martial thinks of their drunken hooliganism! At first they call me a hot lip, and you let them get away with it! And then you let them get away with everything!
As much as it makes her seem uptight, they also give her some moments. Like they're not afraid to explain to us in certain moments that she's actually incredibly good at her job.
She's incredibly good, and she chills out after this.
And even though she's constantly pestered, she does end up hooking up with Duke, who is trying to be quiet about it, but it doesn't. And there's so much more bits of comedy. It's all layered. There's
the part where they go to Japan.
Any Robert Altman movie at a certain point is definitely worth a rewatch for all the little human conversational details. But yeah, this is the one this movie's maybe the reason we got so much Robert Altman after this point and why he became so prolific. And he was pretty well solid up into the 90s. There's definitely some controversial ones. He made so many fucking movies. I really want to do some deep dives on some lesser known in the future. But yeah, that is MASH from 1970 that would inspire a television phenomenon. One of the knocks on it may be the fact that it inspired so many like goofy, crude comedies, because most of that shit's not even that funny. But
true.
But that's the difference between this one. Even when you're kind of like not laughing along with them at all of their antics, the charm is still there. It's still funny the majority of the time.
So much of what followed was shock value.
I don't think its comedy was ever meant to be shocking. Even the Houlihan drop thing. I think the shock is overwhelmed by the operating scenes when you actually see men hemorrhaging blood. That helps kind of tamp down even those extremely crude moments, because nothing's going to be worse than watching a man bleed out on an operating table, no matter what, no matter the era or whatever.
No matter how much they shit on each other, the only person they really hate and get rid of is
Frank.
Come on! Hey! I'm wearing glasses for God's sake!
Watch out for your goodies, Hawkeye. That man is a sex maniac. I don't think Hot Lips satisfied him.
Frank, we love you.
Don't let him kiss you, Hawkeye.
And they cart him off in a frickin' straitjacket.
Their tour is over, and it's time to go. But the movie ends by announcing... The movie will announce, like, movies that'll be watching and the things and activities that the regiments can do. It starts to talk about this movie called MASH.
Tonight's movie will be
MASH, and then goes through the cast that we've been watching through this, so it kind of breaks this fourth wall. That definitely had to be a very unique thing for its time. But that's the movie MASH from 1970, directed by Robert Altman. We're going to give this 1 through 5 each, combined for best out of 10. I think it's a very solid comedy of its time. I do love me some Robert Altman. I think it is a pretty solid 4.
I'm going to give it a 4.25.
So that is an 8.25 for Robert Altman's MASH. So take a look at our list, folks. Robert Altman's MASH from 1970 rests between Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon and Phil Tippett's Mad God. It's at least as good as that, if not better. Like I said before, if you want a more perfected version of this style of comedy that maybe isn't so obviously comical and even has a even more layered messaging, I recommend Nashville. It shows him at his most perfected of what he established. That said, we're going to get the fuck out of here. Check the show notes for links, other places to find us. We got 2 more war movies and then a couple of Lars von Trier movies before we get on to our next topic the following month. Yeah, like, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think of MASH? I don't have a lot of memories of the show itself. I kind of wish I watched more of it, but there's a lot of TV. I don't know if I'll get to it now. I may just rather watch the movie again. But yeah, let's get the fuck out of here.
Let's hear it for the boys.
Tonight's movie has been MASH. Follow the zany antics of our combat surgeons as they cut and stitch their way along the front lines. Starring Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, Tom Skerritt, Sally Kellerman, Robert Duvall, Joanne Flug, Renee Aubergenois, Roger Bowen, Gary Berghoff, David Arkin, John Chuck, Fred Williamson, Indus Arthur, Tim Brown, Corey Fisher, Bud Cort, Carl Gottlieb, Dawn Damon, Tamara Horrocks, Ken Primus, Danny Goldman, Kim Atwood, Michael Murphy, G. Wood, Rick Thielen, and Bobby Troop. Goddamn Army. That is all.